What's up everybody, Jack of Many Trades here, back again with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new iPhone 14 Pro Max. I picked this iPhone up last Friday, got it delivered, and this is the 256 gigabyte model. So it's not the top of the line, but it's sort of middle tier. This cost $1,199 in the United States. I know it's a little bit more expensive elsewhere, so if you do not live in the US, unfortunately it will be a little bit more expensive for you. But that is the price here. I don't know if you can see too well, but I did pick up the purple colorway. Yes, this is the deep purple color. As you can see, the sides are pretty saturated purple. It's a very nice deep purple. It's not like any of the pastel colors that iPhones have come in the past. It's a very, very classy looking color.
Alright, so for those of you who may be interested in seeing what the unboxing experience is like, here is kind of a video that I had taken when I first got the phone. So as you can see, with most Apple products, this has pull tabs on the back, so once you remove them, you gain access to the phone. So opening it up here, there is the brand new deep purple iPhone 14 Pro Max, the very large camera sensors, as you can see. So setting that aside, if we take a look at, now if we remove the peel here, get a first look at what the display looks like. Here I have my iPhone 12 Pro Max on the left, iPhone 14 Pro Max on the right. And there we are, booted up for the first time. Start setup process. As you can see, as with any new iPhone, if you have one already, it makes the setup process really easy. You can transfer all your information over, scan the code. Alright, so here we're continuing setup with the iPhone 12 on the left side, iPhone 14 Pro Max on the right. We just get a pop-up that asks us to confirm our phone number and connect to Verizon. In the case of Verizon, they're going to text you a code that you just input and it'll get set up. Alright, so once we are activated with our eSIM, just give it a couple of minutes here. Your eSIM is now activated, and now we can just finish up setup as normal. Here's a comparison of what the Atlantic Blue looks like compared to the Deep Purple.
So you can see the dynamic island up here. When it's locked, you can see the little lock icon. If we go here to unlock it, you can see it pops right open. And here we are. So it's a pretty standard iPhone, basically. Nothing looks too particularly different. But one thing that we can see as a pretty big difference is that if you go into display and brightness, you can now switch on or off the always on display. So if you don't like that, you have the option to not use it. But I will leave it on because I want to get the most out of this phone. So moving on to battery. Some people have said that the battery life on the 14 is not as good as the 13. I don't know since I never owned the 13, but I did have the 12. So what you can see here is that my 14 was last charged at 55% before, which was mainly just transferring videos from this device to my MacBook. But prior to that, I had charged to 97%, and it went all the way down to 44% with approximately 8 hours of screen on time. So to me, battery life is really not that bad. I've been using it pretty heavy with the camera, taking away 61% of my battery in an hour and 8 minutes, shooting at 4K, 60 FPS, HDR. So, you know, if you're going to be doing long film days or something like that, you could end up with lower battery life than expected, but honestly, it's not really that bad. As you can see here, over the past 9 days, battery life has been pretty decent. Most days I'm getting 6 to 8 hours of battery life, and that's with moderate usage, typically using YouTube like 4 or 5 hours a day. You know, you're going to be just fine. And I charge my phone well before it gets down to 0. I typically charge it around 35%. And so my usage may look a little bit less than you'd expect, but I promise it will actually last quite a long time. If you choose to take it all the way down to 0, you'll definitely get about 9 hours. All right, so something that I really wanted to talk about here, which is something that I don't hear a lot of people discussing, is the sound quality improvements on the new 14 Pro Max. I had the 12 Pro Max, and I thought its speakers were decent. You know, they got the job done. They weren't super loud, but they did a good job. But they weren't really high definition. You couldn't hear a lot of instruments and complicated music. So it was kind of good for phone speakers, but not really that great. What really surprised me was the first time that I played something on this new iPhone, I was absolutely blown away. So I'm going to pull up a song that I'd written, and I'm going to play it for you guys so you can hear what these speakers sound like.
Alright, so here I'm going to show a sound test comparison between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro Max at full volume. This is going to be a little bit difficult because I had some background noise, but hopefully you can hear the difference. So obviously you can see there was quite a big difference between the two phones. Now I'm going to show you the decibel level reading for the iPhone 14 Pro Max at full volume. As you can see, it's around 75 to 77 decibels, which is very loud.
So in addition to the volume, what's also nice about the new iPhones is that when you are playing music, you can swipe it up, and as you can see, it hides away up here in the dynamic island. All you have to do is long press it, and that will bring up your media controls, a little animation showing that music is playing. You have your AirPlay controls. You can play, pause, skip, reverse, all of that. What's also nice is that you have the ability to put even more things up there. So if we create a quick timer here, and throw that up. And as you can see, the dynamic island shifts around, and now we have the timer active. So we can bring that up, pause it, or stop it. Right, so we'll stop it there. As you can see, it's kind of a new feature, so there may be some bugs here and there, but overall, not bad. All right, so the next thing that I really wanted to discuss is sort of the problem that's been discussed among other YouTubers and people in the tech community for quite a while, and more so recently, is the fact that iPhones still ship with a Lightning connector. I appreciate that now our Lightning connector is USB-C to Lightning, so you do get access to faster charging. But the file transfer speeds using Lightning are still much, much slower than you can get with a USB-C capable device. More so if you're talking about a Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 capable device like the iPad Pro, which is also made by Apple. So I don't know why they insist on keeping Lightning around, especially when they're talking about the iPhone 14 Pro Max as being a great companion for filmmaking, which honestly I think it is. The video quality is excellent. All of the new features that they put into it, they really make the iPhone stand out as something special in terms of phone cameras. Their computational photography is excellent. The stabilization for video is great. But I just don't see how they can really say all of these things and then continue to give us such poor connectivity, where if you're trying to transfer a 20-minute 4K 60 FPS video using this phone, it'll take you about 20 to 30 minutes. I mean, that's really, really bad. And with the iPad, you don't really have that issue. The iPad uses Thunderbolt, and its connectivity is just so much faster than the iPhone, and I don't know why Apple refuses to bring it to iPhone, especially since iPhone has by far the best camera of any Apple device. I don't know, it's just doesn't really make much sense to me. But anyway, right, so here I wanted to discuss a product that I've been using with my iPhone, which is the UAG Plyo series Magsafe compatible case. This is a must-have in my opinion, not sponsored by UAG to say that, but I have been using their products for many years at this point, and I firmly stand by them. I've dropped my phones over the years plenty of times using their cases and nothing ever happened to them. They all look pristine, so I can definitely attest that these cases are the real deal. They are rated for military standards of drop test, so this particular one is actually the best that they've had yet, which is capable of um, sustaining a 16-foot drop. So if you drop this phone, in this case, from 16 feet, it will be protected. I don't know who would need to drop it that far, but if you happen to chuck your phone off of a small parking garage or something like that, it should be just fine. All right, so just to test the Magsafe on this case, we're going to drop our phone on Magsafe. As you can see, animation pops up, and you can see we're charging. So charging does work with this case, as you would expect. As far as the strength of the Magsafe, you can shake it around a little bit. It does drop off eventually, so sort of a moderate strength, I would say. It's not necessarily the strongest Magsafe I've ever seen, but it does the job. All right, so while we're on the topic of Magsafe and iPhone accessories that you might want to pick up, here is an Anchor power bank. This is Magsafe, although you could also plug in USB-C and charge that way, but Magsafe is a little bit more convenient in that you don't have to worry about any wires dangling around. So how this works is you just have the Magsafe there, put it on the back, and as you can see, we start charging. Because this is not an Apple created product, you don't get the Magsafe logo like with the Apple version, but it does work. It'll charge your phone. This is not going to be able to charge an iPhone 14 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max, or 12 Pro Max all the way up. There's just not enough capacity, but it'll definitely boost your battery life. So if you're running low, this is a good thing for that. Another feature that I really appreciate about this is that it has a kickstand. So if you fold this out, you can watch your content like this or vertically. And since it's MagSafe, you can also put the iPhone on sideways and have it oriented like this on your desk. So that's the Anchor power brick here. Again, as with all of the things that I show off on my channel, I will leave links to where you can find these things if you want to pick them up. Alright, so now we'll take a look at some daily tasks here. So let's open up Apple, see web browsing speed. As you can see, this phone is extremely fast, but you really wouldn't expect anything else from an iPhone. Their silicon is just heads and shoulders above anything else on the market. This also gives a pretty good introduction to a pretty nice feature that they have on the 14 Pro Max. It's new to me, but it's not new to iPhones. So the 13 Pro Max first introduced the ProMotion display. This one also has a ProMotion display. What that means is that the display will refresh at 120 times a second. And so that translates into just very smooth scrolling, more natural motion of things on your screen, and just sort of a better overall experience. It is actually noticeable, so that is something that's really nice. While on the topic of display, this phone comes with the brightest display that Apple has shipped in an iPhone yet, 2000 nits peak brightness when you're outside. So if you're having difficulty seeing your phone outside, this will really help you out with that. So some of the other features that they have in here is crash detection. This will automatically call for help if you are in a car accident, so that's something that's really great to see them adding, even if you never use it, which hopefully you don't have to. This has a 48 megapixel main camera, which is much more megapixels than the previous generations, which only had 12 megapixels. However, the way that they're using that technology in this phone is to basically use a 4x4 matrix of pixels, so you don't actually always get 48 megapixel photos. They're typically 12 megapixel photos, but because you have 4 pixels for each pixel in the photo, you're going to get more detail. This also has cinematic mode, which can do 2.7K at 60 FPS, so that'll stabilize your video a lot. This comes with the A16 Bionic chip, which is incredibly fast. You get your standard all-day battery life, ceramic shield. This phone, like its predecessor, is water and dust resistant. So what's this phone like to use in the real world? I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised using this phone, particularly with cell service. The first interaction I had with this was obviously setting it up, and I've always had a lot of issues using SIM cards in the past. Whenever I would try to activate with Verizon, their auto activation would never work for me, and I'd always have to resort to calling them and then going through a whole hour-long or more process trying to explain to them how to activate the phone and what I'm trying to do, and it was always such a nightmare. So I was kind of expecting this eSIM thing to be even worse, considering that it's built into the phone. But I was pleasantly surprised when I activated this. My phone number was already on the device. It knew exactly what it was supposed to do. All I had to do was just simply push activate SIM, wait a couple seconds, and my SIM card was activated. No need to call anybody, no need to go on the internet. Everything was set up right away. So that was actually a really pleasant surprise. Definitely, if you're worried about the eSIM thing, at least in the United States on Verizon, I can confirm that it is no trouble at all. So speaking of cell service, that is another thing that really surprised me about this phone. So with my 12 Pro Max, I generally had good signal wherever I went, but there were some places like the church that I go to, which are basically black holes for cellular service. There, I would barely ever get even 1 bar of service, and most of the time I would be on Apple's SOS, which is basically just the essentials. You don't have any data or anything at all. So it was a really bad experience for me, and I wasn't expecting this to be very much better, but I can report that the cell service is significantly improved on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. In that same location where I used to get 0 bars of anything, I now get between 2 and 3 bars of LTE. I can download things, I can open up web pages, everything works as you would expect, and it's actually really incredible that they were able to improve cell service so much. So speaking of connectivity and ways that you can connect with others, this iPhone and all of the iPhone 14 models this year support the ability to contact local satellites orbiting around the Earth. So what this is good for is, say you're lost in the middle of the woods on a mountain and you have no cell service at all. What this will be able to do is to connect you to a satellite and provide you with the tools necessary to get you help by putting you in contact with emergency services to get you out of there. This is a feature that I was actually really excited for when I saw the keynote, but later I found out that it's being offered free for 2 years for iPhone. So if you buy an iPhone, you will have this peace of mind for 2 years. After that, I don't really know what they're going to do. I don't know if it's going to be bundled with Apple One or if it's going to be its own service. So I guess we'll have to wait and see there. But I did want to mention that it doesn't sound like it's going to be free forever. So do keep that in mind. But regardless, it's nice to have the ability to connect to satellites using your cell phone rather than having to carry around one of those individual satellite receivers in case you get into trouble. Alright, so here I'm showing what your movies are going to look like when you watch them on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. As you can see, colors look really great, videos very bright. The dynamic island, it does get in the way a little bit. I think in some ways it's a little bit worse than if you're coming from an iPhone 12 Pro Max or 13 Pro Max or really any iPhone since the iPhone 10. Because at least with the notch, you didn't see video above and below it, you only saw it around it. With the dynamic island, it's kind of just a big punch out there. And so it can be a little bit distracting to see content on both sides of it. But, I don't think it's really the end of the world. It's still a very beautiful display. All right, so what are my thoughts on the iPhone 14 Pro Max? Do I think you should buy it? Well, that's a sort of complicated question. This is obviously the top of line iPhone, so if you want the best and you have the money, I would say go for it, especially if you are not somebody who has an iPhone 13 Pro Max, since I don't think that there's many upgrades here over the 13 Pro Max, other than the vastly improved speakers and also improved cellular connection. Additionally, this has the always on display, so if you really care about that, that's a feature here. This has the dynamic island, but I don't really think that that's something that should be a deciding factor for you. And the other main difference here is that you have increased low light performance for the cameras. You have a better, larger sensor capable of 48 megapixel photography and a couple of other features. But really, I think if you have an iPhone 13 Pro Max, you should be good. If you have an iPhone 12 Pro Max and earlier, I think this is a good enough upgrade to where you'll actually feel a difference. But overall, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give this a pretty solid 9. There's minor things like the timer in the dynamic island, as you saw earlier in this video, didn't quite exit when I thought it would. Just minor bugs here and there with the dynamic island, but overall, I think it's a pretty great upgrade. Um, as long as you are a fan of iPhones, I think you're going to like it. And even if you're new to iPhones, I think it's a really solid phone. The cameras are great, the audio is great, cell service also great. I just think that it's a very solid phone. But as with anything these days, things are getting so fast and so reliable and so performant that upgrading every year I don't think is a necessity anymore. it's really just if you want to be that person that has the newest thing all the time. So, with that, I would like to thank you for watching, and please rate, comment, and subscribe.